I had an interesting question. It was for the Late Kick Extra podcast, but I thought I had an open spot at the end of tonight's show. And this, to me, really deals with a couple of programs, even though the question is about one man. So I thought I'd hit it tonight. Just as sure as I say that, I forgot to write down who submitted the question. You know what? Whoever submitted this question, I responded to you, and I told you I was going to address it tonight. So you know who you are. Thank you. Fill in the blank. Fill in the blank asks, do you think Kevin Steele is the best defensive coordinator in the SEC? Most of you know who that is. For those of you who don't, that is the current defensive coordinator at Auburn. He's been there 5 years now. And so what do I think? What do we think on this? Think along with me. What do you think about this? Kevin Steele. It's not a name that pops to the front of everyone's mind nearly as quickly as, let's say, Brent Venables at Clemson does nationally. Now, we're talking about teams in the Southeastern Conference here. But who would we put above him? Who would you put above him? It's not Bo Pelini at LSU. He just got back 15 minutes ago. Is it Dan Lanning at Georgia? Guy's going into his second year. I mean, do we really know where Dan Lanning stops and Kirby Smart's great recruiting starts? I don't know. I think you need a bigger body of work. Is it Elko at A&M? He's 3 years in, but they're still rebuilding that roster. So to be honest, even 3 years in, we really don't fully know what we have with Mike Elko. Barry Odom could be the answer to this question, truth be told, at Arkansas, but because of roster limitation and the fact that he has been there about 15 minutes too, we can't answer him. There are two names that I think you could arrive at. One is Kevin Steele, and the other one's Todd Grantham. Those are the two names that I think you could arrive at. And if I were to poll coaches, I don't necessarily know where this would land, but I know that I've talked to some people inside the SEC. If I were to poll personnel on the coaching side of the fence inside the SEC, Kevin Steele, Todd Grantham, you can have one of them as your defensive coordinator. Who would you take? I think because the scheme that Grantham runs is a lot more exotic. They just do more things. I think a lot of them would lean Grantham. But to me, I don't think you go wrong either way. And it's one of those deals where I would give you first pick, and I'll just take whoever is left over, because I'd be more than happy to take Kevin Steele off your hands if you want to leave him with me. Either one of them work because they both really hit on the same point. And the point is this. The head coach at Florida is Dan Mullen. The head coach at Auburn is Gus Malzahn. Malzahn is admittedly further into his tenure at Auburn than Mullen is at Florida. But think about, to this point in their respective tenures at their respective outposts, what has been the identity of their best teams? Auburn, especially lately, what has been the identity of their team when they're winning these games out of nowhere against number one Georgia, number one Alabama, when they're at their best? And when Florida, so far, under Dan Mullen, has been at their best, has it been hanging half 100 every week? Or has it been doing enough not to lose offensively, but then playing lockdown defense, opportunistic defense, turning the ball over on defense? Here's what they've done. Whether it be Grantham at Florida or whether it be Kevin Steele at Auburn, what they've done is they've been good enough to overturn what the identity really is supposed to be of those programs. If you're a believer, as I am, that when programs are good, they're probably reflecting the fingerprint of their head coach, that's the antithesis of what you've got at Auburn. When Auburn's been at their best recently, it's been because they've won defensively in spite of offensive limitations. Well, that's not Gus Malzahn. I mean, that's not how you would describe a Gus Malzahn program from 50,000 feet. And it's the same at Florida. Now, at Florida, again, Mullen hasn't been there as long, so you could say, okay, well, you got to give him time to get his guys. But even if that's the case, that's the whole point. Todd Grantham's been good enough to where they've been a contender because he's made the identity of the program defense for the time being. Whether it remains that way is to be seen. So, I mean, use the Auburn example. Since we talked about and since you asked about Kevin Steele, imagine if we were to take a time portal and we were to travel back to 2013, and there we are. It's in Pasadena, California, I believe. It's the national championship game, and Auburn's gone into the locker room with a big lead on Florida State. And here comes Florida State, and they're storming back. But, I mean, Auburn has taken a program. Malzahn, in his first year, has taken a program that was 4-8 the year before. Didn't even make a bowl game. And he's taken a lot of that same roster, and he's got them within one quarter of a national championship in his first year. And they have run roughshod in many cases over the SEC in this 2013 season, and they have put up ungodly offensive numbers, again, with some of those very same players that could not walk and chew gum at the same time the season before. And you're watching them, and they just narrowly get clipped at the last minute against Florida State. But imagine if you were to freeze that fourth quarter, and there's Gus Malzahn in his first year at Auburn, and he is rewriting the Auburn offensive record books in the process of, as of this point, you remember we've paused it in the fourth quarter, it looks like they're about to win a national championship. And imagine if I were to tell you 7 years from now, friend, he is still going to be the head coach at Auburn. But 5, 6, 7 years from now, when they're at their best, it'll just be because of defense. And you'll have questions every year offensively. And there'll be times where it looks like they take a step forward, but then they take 2 steps back. And can you believe that? And you'd say no. I mean, if we don't continue to click offensively, if we regress that much offensively, there's no way he's going to stay here. And I would agree with you. But Kevin Steele would have proved us wrong. So that's the case for Kevin Steele. I think it's a pretty good case to be made, to be honest with you, for Kevin Steele. I don't know who his representative is. It may be Sexton. But if it's not Mr. Steele, I'm available. I may have a lot of free time in the not too distant future, actually.